My name is Ava Thompson, and for as long as I can remember, I've been nothing but a shadow in my own life. At 28, I've come to understand the role I've played, steady, responsible, the one who quietly takes care of everything while everyone else revels in their own glory. My parents, Susan and Mark, run Thompson's Oven, a modest bakery nestled in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. It's well known in town for its fresh loaves and sugar-dusted pastries, but no one knew me. I spent my childhood in that bakery behind the counter, while others laughed and played. Cleaning, studying, inhaling the scent of butter and flour. I was invisible. My younger brother Brandon, though, was the golden child. 2 years younger, effortlessly adored. He could forget his homework and still get sympathy. When I earned a scholarship, it was expected of me. When Brandon smiled, the world stopped. He was loved without effort, while I had to prove my worth at every turn. I never complained. I built my life piece by piece: scholarships, modest apartments, a job in marketing at a furniture company. Discipline over indulgence. No debt, no reckless spending. I was careful always. I believed that if no one opened a door for you, you built your own. The only person who ever made me feel loved for who I truly was my grandfather, Walter. He remembered my birthday without a reminder, and he saw something in me that no one else did. He once told me I had vision. When he passed away 3 years ago, I thought my heart had cracked wide open, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. During the reading of his will, I learned he'd left me a trust fund. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to open the door to dreams I had long put on hold, a coffee shop maybe, or just enough to live without worrying about every penny. There were stipulations. I could only access it once I turned 31, and even then only for specific purposes: housing, education, or starting a legitimate business. It seemed fair, so I tucked it away, like a quiet promise, untouched and waiting. I thought things would stay simple, but then Brandon got engaged. The shift was immediate, subtle, like a storm brewing in the distance. He showed up one evening with a ring that sparkled under the kitchen lights, his fiancée Delilah at his side. She was everything. I wasn't effortlessly beautiful, charming, adored by everyone with just a glance. My mother was already laughing at her jokes, my father relaxed in her presence. And there I was, sitting silently across the room, watching as the warmth of the room seemed to bend around her. Delilah Carter, 27 years old, with her smile like brown sugar and her voice smooth as honey. She didn't have to try to be loved. It came naturally. When the laughter finally faded, she turned toward me. Her eyes, mischievous, calculated, didn't seem like the gaze of a mere guest. They were the eyes of someone who had already planned her next move. "Ava," she said, her voice soft, almost innocent. "I heard your grandfather left you a trust fund. Have you thought about helping Brandon with his wedding?" I didn't say anything at first. The words were too casual, but the tone was anything but. It was a probing, deliberate statement made in front of the entire family, like a carefully laid trap. I could feel the pressure of the moment. No one else seemed to notice. They laughed, they toasted, oblivious. I set my wine glass down, doing my best to maintain the smile I had perfected over the years. Yeah, he left me something, but I can't access it until I turn 31, and I already have plans for it. Delilah's smile never wavered, but her eyes, they sharpened just for a second, like she was marking something in her mind. She tilted her head, a subtle move that told me this was no simple question. "Oh, of course," she said, her voice like a velvet thread. "I just thought maybe someone in the family could help. Starting a new life is tough, you know." I smiled back, but there was a tightness in my chest, something crawling at the back of my throat. It was a polite smile, but my mind was racing. She wasn't just talking about a wedding. She wasn't asking for help. She was testing the waters. I nodded, the words choking in my mouth. Of course. But as she turned away, clinking glasses with someone else, I felt the weight of her gaze lingering, like she was measuring me, deciding her next move. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a conversation. It was the beginning of something far darker, something I hadn't prepared for. The nightmare was only just beginning. After that evening, I assumed the topic of the trust fund would dissipate like the faintest of afterthoughts. But not even a week passed before Delilah made her next move. This time, it was at my uncle's backyard barbecue in Cranberry Township. The sun hung low, casting a lazy golden light over the gathering, with burgers sizzling on the grill and wedding plans floating in the air like idle chatter. It was supposed to be a simple family gathering, a reprieve from the tension. But Delilah had other ideas. She sat next to me under the porch roof, her floral dress fluttering softly in the breeze. "Ava," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, enough for only the two of us to hear. "I don't mean to bother you, but I've been working on the wedding budget. Brandon mentioned you might have a little extra set aside." "Is that true?" I set my glass of ice water on the wooden table, my eyes following the kids running around on the grass, laughing as they played. I kept my gaze on them, unwilling to meet Delilah's, trying to anchor myself in the moment. "I don't have extra," I said slowly. "That trust isn't accessible until I turn 31, and even if it were, it wouldn't be for someone else's wedding." Delilah let out a short laugh, but it was no longer sweet or light. It was something sharp, clipped, and altogether different. "Yeah, I get it. It's just Brandon's under a lot of pressure. My family wants us to have the wedding at a nice venue, but we're struggling a bit. I just thought, if you could help, just a small part, it'd be a lot more meaningful than letting that money sit untouched for another 3 years. I turned to face her, then the tightness in my chest making it hard to breathe. Delilah's gaze didn't flinch, but I could see her calculation now. This wasn't a request, it was a plan. It's not just sitting there. "Delilah," I said, my voice steady but my heart thumping in my throat. "I have plans for it, and I'm under no obligation to pay for anyone's wedding." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly, not a hint of remorse in her eyes. "Oh, I didn't mean to pressure you," she said smoothly. "I just thought, you are part of Brandon's family." Family. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. Strange how someone who'd only been in my brother's life for a few months could talk about family like it was a badge she'd earned. I looked at her for one final beat, but the words were already choking me. I left the party early that evening, not wanting to be trapped under the weight of Delilah's gaze, her smile, her expectations. When I got home, I checked my phone, half expecting a message from my mom, and there it was. Delilah spoke with me. "She's just worried about Brandon. Don't be too harsh on her." I didn't reply. Every time I stayed silent, people assumed I was agreeing with them. But this time, I wasn't. I was just wondering, if I kept yielding, how much more would they expect? 2 weeks later, I reluctantly agreed to attend a brunch that Delilah had organized with a few of her friends. Brandon said it would be good for building a sister-in-law relationship, and I too was curious. I needed to see what she was up to. The brunch was held at a French-style cafe in Shadyside. I arrived 5 minutes late, deliberately needing the distance. When I walked in, Delilah and her friends were seated around the table, all dressed like they were preparing for a royal wedding. "Ava, you're here?" Delilah beamed, and the warmth in her voice almost made me forget the tension. Before I could even take a sip of my orange juice, the conversation was already being steered in a direction I didn't want to go. A woman named Madison said I wish I had a fund like Ava's. If it were me, I'd invest in my family. Help out the people who matter most. Exactly, another chimed in. "Weddings are a big deal. Once you're in the family, well, what's yours is everyone's right. I set my glass down with deliberate care and looked directly at Delilah. Thanks for the breakfast. But if this meeting was a setup to manipulate me, I think I'll excuse myself. Delilah blinked, clearly startled by my coldness. Ava. I didn't ask them to say any of that. I just told my friends I was stressed. I'm sorry if you felt uncomfortable. I stood up slowly, my voice calm but firm. Delilah, whether I have money or not is my business, and I won't let anyone, your friends included, put pressure on me about it. I left the cafe without another word. Later that evening, Brandon called. His voice was strained, tired. I really don't want you two to be at odds, he said. I think Delilah's just anxious about the wedding. Being anxious is one thing, Brandon, but constantly circling back to the idea that I should pay for your wedding, that's not anxiety anymore. But you have? I cut him off. No, not yet. And even if I did, I don't owe it to anyone. Brandon exhaled heavily, the weight of the conversation pulling him down. Delilah just wants to feel like part of the family, I replied coldly. Then maybe she should start by respecting the people in that family. I hung up before he could say anything else. Friday night, just after I got home from work, my phone rang again. It was my mom. Eva, I know you feel like you're under pressure, but Delilah just wants to be accepted. She's not trying to cause trouble. Trouble? I let out a quiet laugh, though my chest felt hollow. I never said she was malicious, Mom, but that money is mine. Just because I haven't used it doesn't mean it's up for grabs. And that was the moment I realized something. Nothing would ever be the same. Mom went silent for what felt like an eternity. I just think maybe if you shared a little, it would ease the tension in the family, she whispered, her voice heavy with unspoken expectations. I ended the call, then sat quietly on the couch, the soft glow from the lamp casting long shadows on the white walls around me. It felt as though the room was reflecting the questions swirling in my mind. Am I being too cold? Am I clinging to something I don't even need right now? I had thought walking away from that brunch would be the end of it. But I had underestimated Delilah. Instead of confronting me head-on, she switched tactics. At every family gathering, she stopped addressing me directly. Instead, she began to drop sly, floating comments, gentle on the surface but sharp underneath. One evening, as we sat around Grandma's table eating pumpkin pie, she said, "It's such a blessing when someone in the family has the means to chase their dreams. If I had that kind of fortune, I'd use it to care for loved ones, bring everyone closer." She didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of her words settle on the table. Her eyes were on everyone else, but I knew she wasn't just talking about the money. She was talking to me. Another time, while flipping through a wedding album, Delilah's fingers brushed over a page featuring a lavishly decorated ceremony hall. "Brandon and I love this venue," she said softly, "but we know it's just a dream. We don't want to be a burden on anyone." I set my coffee cup on the table and gave a faint smile. "Who told you you're being a burden?" I asked, my voice even, but edged with tension. Delilah turned toward me, her eyes wide, as if I had offended her. "Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I was just thinking out loud." That was the moment I realized Delilah had switched to a Cold War strategy where subtlety and manipulation replaced open confrontation. Meanwhile, Brandon began to side with her more clearly. One night, I received a call from him. His voice wasn't confrontational, but something had shifted. "Ava, I've been thinking a lot," he said, his words cautious, measured. "I know you have plans for the trust, but I think I deserve a say too." I raised an eyebrow, my grip tightening on the phone. "What are you saying, Brandon? That you have some kind of claim over the trust?" He was quick to respond. "Grandpa left it specifically to me, not a claim," he said. "But Delilah and I are in a tough spot right now. Just a small portion could make a big difference." I felt the heat in my chest, my fingers curling around the phone. "I've said this before, the trust isn't accessible yet, and I already have my own plans for it. Brandon was quiet for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. You keep saying your plans, but what about everyone else? What about the family? My mother, who had always been gentle with me, had begun to shift her tone as well. One afternoon, while I was helping at the bakery, she pulled me aside in the kitchen, away from the customers. I know you don't want to feel pressured, she whispered. But think about it. If your grandfather were still alive, would he want you clinging to that money? Or would he be proud to see you help your brother on his big day? I looked at her, the weight of her words sinking deep into my chest. I'm not clinging, Mom, I said softly. I'm honoring what he left me because he trusted I'd use it wisely, not because someone cornered me into it. She let out a soft sigh. Sometimes keeping peace in the family matters more than who's right or wrong. I gave a dry smile, but it was empty. The problem is, I said quietly, everyone's using peace as an excuse to push me into sacrificing. Even my dad, normally quiet, decided to weigh in that Sunday evening at dinner. He pulled his chair closer, his eyes still fixed on his plate of grilled meat. I know you're a responsible person, he said, but sometimes responsibility isn't just about taking care of yourself. It's about helping the people you love, even when it's not part of the plan. I felt surrounded not by knives or raised voices, but by soft, calculated words that peeled back your skin one layer at a time. Everyone kept saying it was out of love, but why did it feel like I was being cornered into giving up everything? That night, I sat alone in my apartment under the soft yellow glow of my lamp. I opened Grandpa's old letter, his handwriting shaky but still familiar. Ava, if there ever comes a time when people around you don't understand, you remember Grandpa does. I left you this money because I believe you'll know what's best. I folded the letter, placed it gently on my chest, and closed my eyes. I knew I was doing the right thing, but the feeling of being isolated by my own family sat in my throat like a stone. Maybe this wasn't the climax yet. I knew one thing for sure. If they pushed any further, I wasn't staying silent. That Saturday night, I stopped by Mom's house to pick up a few old things still in the garage. As I walked into the living room, I saw Delilah sitting there with my mom. They were drinking tea, chatting like old friends. I gave a polite nod, planning to head straight to the garage, but Delilah stood up, and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that she wasn't done with me. Eva, she said, her voice no longer sweet, no longer careful. I think it's time we had an honest conversation. I turned back slowly, catching my mother's eyes. She was staring down into her teacup, as if wishing she could shrink into it, disappear. I waited. My heart beat in my ears. Delilah's words sliced through the silence like a knife. You've said no, and I understand that, but I have to be honest. I'm really disappointed. The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. There was a moment of silence so thick, so suffocating, that I could have sworn the air itself had become solid. My mother remained silent, and in that moment I realized there would be no help coming from her. Delilah continued, her voice smooth and calculated. You have the power to help us start our life in a good place, and instead, you're choosing to keep it to yourself. I don't want to use this word, but honestly, you're being selfish. Selfish. The word echoed in my mind, each syllable grinding out like stone against stone. I repeated it, my voice flat. You're talking about money I haven't even touched, left to me by my grandfather with specific conditions. You're calling me selfish for not breaking the rules so you can have a lavish wedding? Delilah crossed her arms, chin raised slightly, her eyes narrowing, calculating my every reaction. It's not lavish, she said, her voice cool. "We just want one special day to start our life, and I think if you really cared about family, you'd do the right thing." I didn't respond, not right away. I just looked at my mother. She stayed silent. She didn't take my side. 3 days later, Brandon texted me asking to meet for lunch at a small Mexican place near my office. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the phone, but eventually I agreed. Maybe I was still holding out hope for an apology, a shred of conscience, a sign that my younger brother, the one I once trusted, the one I once thought would stand by me, hadn't completely fallen under Delilah's spell. When I walked into the restaurant, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Delilah was sitting at the table too, a notebook resting on her lap. Her eyes sparkled with something like anticipation, as though I had just walked into a contract negotiation. "You made it," Brandon said, standing up. "We already ordered for you. Hope you still like enchiladas?" I sat down quietly watching them. This didn't feel like a family meal. It felt like a transaction. After a few pleasantries, Delilah opened her notebook, her voice smooth and deliberate. "So, we've given it a lot of thought, and I think we can meet in the middle." I tilted my head, curiosity piqued despite myself. "Meet in the middle?" Brandon jumped in, visibly tense. "What we mean is, if you can't give all of it, maybe you could give half. You'd still keep the rest. That way everyone wins." I raised an eyebrow. You're asking me to split in half, a trust I haven't even been allowed to access yet, correct?" Delilah nodded, her expression so unreadable it could have been carved from stone. She looked at me as though this request was completely reasonable, like I should be honored they'd considered my situation. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly. "Thanks for taking the time to plan my future for me. But the answer is still no." Delilah frowned, her expression hardening. "You really won't compromise? Not even a little?" I looked her straight in the eye, my voice cold, cutting through the tension in the room. "I don't owe any compromises to people who've spent weeks pressuring and manipulating me." Brandon exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping. "Ava, I thought you were the one who cared about family," I said coldly. "Are you really selling out your sister just to please your fiancé?" I thought that would be the end of it. I should have known better. The next day, my mom called, asking me to come over for what she said would be a calm conversation. When I arrived, I found the entire family there. Dad, Mom, Brandon, Delilah, and me. A full-blown family meeting. They sat around the dining table like we were mediating a property dispute, and I realized that was exactly what this had become. My dad started, his voice low and controlled. "Ava, we're not trying to pressure you, but the whole family feels if you contributed part of the trust, it would relieve a lot of tension." My mom added softly, just a little, as a sign that you support and respect your brother's happiness. Brandon said quietly, "You're in control of everything. One click, and it's done. I know you can do it." I looked at each of them one by one. Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person asked how I felt after being called selfish. All they wanted was the money. I stood up the chair, scraping against the floor as I pushed it back. "If this is what you call family, then at the very least, remember, family is where you're respected, not demanded from." I walked out, and this time, I didn't look back. That night, after the exhausting and disappointing family meeting, I came home, and for the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel: anger, hurt, but strangely clarity. There were no more tears, no more self-doubt. Just one sentence pounding in my head, like a drumbeat. I would not let them take from me what was never theirs to begin with. They won't stop unless I make them stop. The thought echoed in my head like a drumbeat as I sat down at my laptop, the next morning. I typed the words into the search bar, State and Family Harassment Attorney Pittsburgh. I was done letting this spiral out of control. I scheduled a meeting with Melanie Grant, a sharp attorney in her 40s with eyes that had a way of piercing straight through lies. When I walked into her office that Tuesday afternoon, I didn't waste any time. My family is trying to force me to hand over a trust I'm not even legally allowed to touch, I said, and they don't know I've started collecting evidence. Melanie nodded, motioning for me to sit. Tell me everything from the beginning. And I did. Every detail, no matter how small, from Delilah's subtle hints at the bakery to the lunch where she casually opened her notebook like we were negotiating a business deal to the family meeting, where I became the lone obstacle standing between everyone and their so-called happiness. Melanie didn't interrupt. She just took notes, occasionally frowning as I spoke. When I reached the part where Delilah had directly asked me about the trust's value and how her friends started messaging me with comments like, "People with money should share it," Melanie closed her notebook. "Ava, this is no longer just a family matter," she said, her voice sharp. "This is a pattern of harassment. It shows signs of coercion and emotional harm." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling in my chest. "So, what can I do now?" Melanie leaned forward, her voice steady, cutting through the tension in the room. "We'll send Ms. Delilah a cease and desist letter. If she continues, I'll escalate this to court. In the meantime, I want you to start collecting all evidence. Texts, emails, voice recordings if needed. And under no circumstance should you meet with them alone again without a witness." I felt the resolve in her words, but before I could take any action, Delilah made the first move. 3 days later, I received a message from an old college friend. "Ava, I just saw Delilah post a story about a future sister-in-law who has money but never knows how to share. Everyone knows she's talking about you." I checked Instagram. She didn't mention me by name, but every word, every detail was aimed directly at me. Some people don't understand what family means. Not everyone with money has a heart. The comments flooded in, full of sympathy, judgment, and mockery. Some people even tagged Delilah, wishing her strength in dealing with such a selfish family. I was stunned at first, but then the shock faded, replaced by something colder. Determination. I took screenshots of everything and sent them straight to Melanie. She simply replied, "Preserve them. Don't respond. I'm drafting the letter." I thought this was just another social media stunt, but the real blow came the following week. The head of HR at my company called me into his office. "Ava, I need to ask you something," he said. His face tense. "Someone called claiming to be a relative and asked to verify your salary and income records." I was frozen in place. Did they leave a name? No name. Female voice. Polite tone, but too many questions. The moment I left his office, I knew exactly who was behind it. That evening I called Melanie. "She's trying to dig into my financial records through my job. Is there anything worse than this?" Melanie's voice was sharp, cutting through my frustration. "Good. Now we have a clear basis for the formal cease and desist, and if she takes one more step, I'll proceed with filing a civil harassment claim." The next morning, the letter was sent. The wording was simple but firm. Any attempts to access, disclose, or interfere with the personal or financial affairs of our client, Ms. Ava Thompson, will be treated as harassment, invasion of privacy, and defamation, and may result in serious legal consequences. I hit send on the email with a copy to Brandon. I didn't say a word. No apology. No explanation. I didn't need to, but I never expected the turning point in this battle would come from a misdirected message. It happened on a Monday morning, just as I was making coffee at work. My phone buzzed, nonstop messages flying in from the family group chat. Normally, it was just a place for bakery updates and occasional photos of baked goods, but today, it felt like a battlefield. The first message was from Brandon, sent straight into the family chat, which included me, our parents, Delilah, and 2 aunts from Dad's side. Delilah, I can't believe you sent that stuff to your friends. You called Ava a walking safe and said Mom and Dad would pressure her into giving in. Are you serious right now? Then came 3 screenshots, all from Brandon's phone. I froze behind the coffee counter. The screenshots were texts from Delilah sent in a group chat titled Bride Squad. One message read, "Just let Robert and Susan do their thing. Ava will crack soon enough. She's not used to being cornered." Another said, "Brandon's worried, but I'm not." And the last one hit me like a punch to the chest. Pretending to respect Ava is exhausting, but it works. She loves being treated kindly, so I fake it. No big deal. I didn't know what made Brandon look through those messages, but it was clear he meant to send them to Delilah privately and had accidentally dropped them into the family group chat. For the next 3 minutes, the world seemed to freeze. The chat went dead silent. Then my mom texted Delilah, "What is this about?" My dad followed up with Delilah, "Are these messages real?" No response. A minute later, Delilah finally replied, "You're all misunderstanding. I was just venting to close friends. Those messages don't reflect how I really feel." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I left the group chat at night. Brandon called me shortly afterward, his voice trembling slightly. "Ava, I'm sorry. I saw the messages when Delilah left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. I didn't mean to blow everything up like that. I was just so angry." My hands were shaking, and I hit the wrong button. I didn't respond immediately. My mind was racing. I didn't know she thought that way. I thought she was just stressed about the wedding. But after reading what she wrote, I felt ashamed. I closed my eyes and kept my tone steady. "I warned you so many times. I know I was blind," he confessed. "I thought you were just trying to hold on to the money, not that you were hurt." I let out a cold laugh. What I've been trying to protect, Brandon, is my self-respect. The money, that's something Delilah was never worthy of touching. In the days that followed, the illusion shattered. Delilah tried to do damage control by calling every relative. She claimed the messages were just jokes in a private chat, and that Ava is blowing this out of proportion because of pride. But no one believed her, not after they had seen her actual words. One of my aunts, who had once messaged me to be more understanding, now sent me an apology. I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken sides without knowing the full story. A cousin who had commented publicly on Delilah's Facebook post quietly unliked it and messaged me. "Ava, I'm really sorry. I trusted the wrong person. I didn't need to speak up. I didn't need to seek revenge. The truth did it for me." Delilah stopped showing up to family gatherings. Her social media went silent. The sweet stories, the ring photos, the countdown to the big day, all vanished like they'd never existed. My parents, they changed too, not with direct apologies, but through softer glances. When I walked into a room, I could feel it. The way they stopped mentioning the wedding, the silence, it felt more like remorse than distance. As for me, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter. Because in the end, I didn't have to scream to defend myself. I just had to wait for the truth to speak. 3 days after my conversation with Brandon, I got a short text. "I've ended things with Delilah. I'm starting therapy. I need to understand how I let it go this far." I stared at the message on my screen, not sure how to feel. Not victorious, not angry anymore. Just hollow maybe. Because deep down, I always knew this day would come. Brandon had once been the little brother who chased after me, fought over toys, called me the best sister ever whenever I baked cookies. But then he grew up drawn to a kind of spotlight handed out more easily than truth. And when that light faded, he finally realized how long he'd been standing in the wrong place. Delilah vanished completely. No calls, no apologies, no public explanation. A friend from my yoga group told me she'd canceled the wedding venue and returned the dress. Relatives stopped referring to her as the future sister-in-law. All that remained was a void, like a smudge on a family photo that never got framed. My parents started changing in the smallest ways. My mom would ask what I wanted to eat over the weekend. My dad sent me articles about real estate investing with sincere advice. There was still a distance between us, but at least now it wasn't built from pressure or expectations. It was caution rooted in regret. One Sunday evening, when I stopped by the bakery to see them, my mom handed me a box of ginger cookies, my favorite since childhood, but something she rarely made because of how time-consuming they were. She gently placed the box in my hands. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for not listening to you sooner." I looked at her, not needing to say a word. "I don't need you to undo the past. I just need you to understand that I wasn't wrong for protecting what's mine." She nodded. "I understand, and I'm proud of you for doing something I never had the courage to do." I said nothing more because I didn't need to. Some forgiveness doesn't require words. It only needs someone to truly listen and understand, not out of guilt, but out of choice. And that's enough. I began setting new boundaries. I didn't show up at every family dinner. I stopped responding to messages that felt more like interrogation than care. I no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. The trust fund still sits untouched in the account, waiting for the day I turn 31. But now, I no longer see it as a reward or a burden. It's simply a symbol of trust, one passed down from my grandfather, and one I continue to build with myself. I'm in no rush to use it. I've always been capable of building my life with my own two hands. And if the day comes when I decide to use that money, it won't be because someone forced me to. It'll be because I choose to at the right time for the right reasons. Brandon is still in therapy. Sometimes he sends me a short message sharing something from his sessions, or just writes, "What do you think?" I'm not sure if he's changed completely, but I do know he's starting over, and that's the only thing I needed to see from the brother who once turned his back on me. As for me, after everything, I don't see myself as someone who won. I'm just someone who stayed steady through a storm. And from all that seemed broken, I learned 3 simple, precious truths. Family should never cost you your sense of self. Kindness needs boundaries. And true peace can't exist if it comes at the price of your own values. One early autumn morning, I stood at the door of my small apartment, holding a cup of coffee, the chilly breeze running through my unbrushed hair. I smiled, thinking of the future. I still don't know exactly what I'll do with the trust fund. Maybe a small bookshop in the neighborhood, maybe that unfinished master's degree. I still dream about things I haven't even imagined yet. But now, I'm no longer in a hurry to define success or prove anything. This journey taught me to value inner strength more than outside validation. And maybe the most important thing isn't the money my grandfather left, but how I choose to live in a way that honors his faith in me. Whatever lies ahead, I know I'll walk forward with my dignity intact, in a calm no one can take away from me. What do you think about Ava's choices and the way she stood up to family pressure? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, inspiring stories about family boundaries and self-respect.